couldn't you just do the process you did in the fall for the remaining U11s who weren't selected for the AA team? Why couldn't you do that process in the spring to best identify your AA players?
Well, that's what they're doing. That's the process that the AA and A teams are doing this spring, or they've already done majority of it. So they've had some skates to identify a larger pool of players. But I would say in our organization, there is a kind of pretty clear distinction. And because we went through this launchpad process with the double B and the B teams, we also created those teams so that they could move up. So there's a double B team that's entirely minors, and they got their butts kicked all season long. But the teams that won the medals at provincials are all majors. So where do we know that double B team is going to end up? They're all in this pool for double A and A, right? So we sort of seeded them all together and said, listen, you're not going to win a lot of hockey games probably this year, but you're going to end up where you want to be in your major year, which is on the double A team. So we played a little bit of a long game with that process, and that's why we'll continue once we get to the double B tryouts in the fall. We will go through this process again, and we should have enough players to be able to go, hopefully, with an entirely minor team again that can seed the pot again the following year for the double A and the A teams. This is one of our biggest player pools at the U11 age group, which is a great thing. So yeah, the parents, are relatively new to rep hockey at that level. So they're not like, oh, I got to run away. I'm not going to get a spot. I'm going to go to organization X. I think if you tried to do it at U13 and above, all your best players would leave. At least they would here, until we start winning more games, and they stay because we're doing a really great job. They're going to panic if they don't have a spot. I think it's only sustainable for us at U11 and the U9 level.
I see Mike Benelli's on. I don't know when he chimed in or not, but and Jordan Fenton as well. Mike, what have you heard of Kim's story about the two polar opposite selection processes achieving similar outcomes?
Yeah, I heard the tail end of it, and I think it's funny during this whole COVID period, I think I experienced a lot of similar pieces with my own personal team where I basically picked the team last year sight unseen, just if you played quote unquote down here, AAA hockey gets thrown around pretty liberally. So if you were playing travel hockey and you were a disgruntled player from that organization, you probably came and just signed up for our organization, and whoever got their registrations in first basically was put on the team, and our team actually did just as well or maybe better than the team that they had pre-selected last year, the year prior. And I know down here because, and Kim, I think you were kind of alluding to that based off of when you would have your tryouts, but what happens here, and a lot of the organizations I work with, is if you're not the best 6 kids on a team, and you don't think you're going to be one of the best 6 kids, you leave and try to be the best 6 kids on another team. And then the cycle is pretty vicious. But what I'm finding is that the motivation for the lower kids that end up sticking around, that want to get better, or a kid that does get cut and then has any kind of ability, self training ability, that they're going to surpass the kids that are kind of the fat cats that are pretty happy about where they're placed. We saw it, actually. I'm in Florida right now. I was doing some work with the Florida Junior Panthers, and down in Florida, they do a thing called the Florida Alliance. So at the 12-year-old age group, they take the best kids and they put them all on one team from all the different organizations because they think there's not enough competition in Florida. But what they were finding is every year, more than 50% of the kids that were picked for that Alliance team were cut for kids that weren't picked, because the kids that weren't picked trained all year. The other kids just were on planes, going to the Northeast playing games to represent the best kids. So it's just, So I think it's similar. I didn't hear the beginning of Kim's, the reason they had to do that, but I find it with our team, like I said, I think there's a certain age group between 10 and 12, 13 years old that you could easily miss or hit on players on any given moment of their development in time.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. And a challenge for us is it's a number, like we have so many players. It's a great problem to have. And so the flip side of this, of course, is that the parents, want to know where their kid ends up, right? And where she's going to be and then who's her coach going to be, who her teammates are going to be. And it's very hard to make a call on these kids. There's the second best player on this AA team barely made the team. Like she barely made the team, and I would say she was almost as good as the superstar by the end of the season. And she just eked her way on. Like you don't see that a lot at U15 and above. It does happen. I've had the last kid I took on the junior team become the captain the following year and make Team Ontario. But it's very, very rare. At U11 and U13, I mean U9's a whole other animal. It's just like whoever went to hockey camp first, is on the U9 team. It's a bit crazy, but for U11 and 13, there's so much variability, and our challenge is, how do you give these players and coaches and families the most transparent and consistent evaluation process possible? Or are you just trying to do too much, and you just do what our U11 AA coach did, and he just threw it all in a hat and picked some names, and it turned out great because he's a great player developer, right? Like I'm sitting in that spot right now going, we need to do a better job of player selection. But, am I going to put all this time and effort into it and standardizing it and ultimately realize it's not going to make a damn difference? I'm not sure, right? Because we're always going to have enough players. That's never going to be a problem for us, right? Retaining the best players, I agree, Mike, is hard. Although people tend not to make super teams until U13 here, but they're everywhere now, these super teams, right? You take the best from everywhere and aggregate them together. We have a pretty good community feel and culture here, so it's pretty rare that people want to leave, unless they're like one of the top players in the province and they go to the one super team. There's usually only one or two super teams in the girls. But yeah, I feel like we miss kids all the time. There's a kid on that double B team who probably should have been on the AA team, and she developed late. And do you just roll the dice on that? Like, that's not our fault. That's great for the kid. And it sucks that, the guys who are on the planes all year, some of them aren't going to do the extra, and therefore you pick the wrong guy. But how much control can we really have? No one would have picked me when I was 12. I only got on the AA team because my friend's dad was a coach. I was brutal. I would have made it. Nepotism was the only reason I made that team. But I'm sure they were glad they took a flyer on me by the end of the year. But if I had to go through one of these selection processes, I would have never made it. Yeah, that's where I'm not sure how valid it is at the age groups that we're trying to do it at, because you can't legislate what kind of development they're going to do over the summer, or whether they're going to go shoot pucks in the backyard. You just don't know, or whether they like, skiing or sailing or band camp. I don't know. There's just this isn't the NHL. This isn't the national team. I don't know. Maybe we're trying to do too much. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so if I could just chime in, only because one of the things I'm doing here with the programs I work with currently is trying to get them from a model of like a 3-day selection tryout to a body of work communication effort with their players. It's very rare that an organization has an influx of 20 new kids trying out for positions, right? It's probably similar to Kim, where players don't really want to leave and they don't leave, and they just kind of migrate through the program, and it's our job to fit them in the right place. So what I've really mentored programs to do is go within the example I give is, if I go to a tryout for 3 days and I cut Timmy, and Tim's like, well, why was I cut? And like, well, you were cut because you weren't good enough. Okay, well, but you're the development expert. Like, I came to you because you're the best organization that I know of. What can you do to help me get better? Well, you just got to work harder. All right. Now that parent and family leaves just as pissed off that they didn't make the team, because they just don't have any real information. Now, conversely, if I said, "Hey, Timmy, there's no tryouts. You're getting placed on this team because of X, Y, and Z, and you fit in with the organization this way. Here's where your talent is going to be best suited for this team, not for this age group, not for this championship program, but for this particular grouping." I think if we as organizations picked players based off of how they fit within a team concept, it would be better for parents, better for development, better for kids to understand that there are roles in youth hockey programs and that you're fitting into this piece because, yes, you might be the seventh best forward on this team, but guess what? The reason we're putting you on the B team or the other team is because we want to give you the opportunity to have the puck in your stick more and be a bigger role and have a bigger voice in the locker room. And I really do think you can do that at 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. And Kim, I would agree. Like if I ever had to go through a tryout I didn't start playing hockey till I was 11 years old. So if I had to go through a tryout as a 12-year-old, I would have been the guy who knocked over every single cone on the ice and would have got cut in 3 minutes. But I made teams because I just basically outworked everyone and was more passionate about any player on the ice. I didn't have anything to do with my skill level. So I think these selection camps and processes lead themselves to us looking for a certain type of player without looking at what the player can do for a particular team. And I honestly think if parents in organizations knew that that's how you were picking players, I think it would ease a lot of the way we pick teams and kids accept roles in youth organizations, in my opinion.
Jordan, you evaluated you were at the female camp